I'm going to talk about the conference, but let me start by saying I was certainly encouraged by what Dan just said about his optimism that we're going to win this battle at some point, and I think the solutions that both Mikes presented to us are a good sign on that. Let me throw in one condition, though, to that, and that is, I think in order to do that, we have to recognize that we have a serious opponent on our hands here, and we will push these guys into the dustbin of history as long as we're willing to get in there and really fight and work hard for it. That is the true condition. It's always encouraging for me to attend one of these events or other Tea Party events and see the enthusiasm and the dedication of people, and we got to keep that up, and it's going to be a long haul, but eventually a lot of these progressive, liberal, whatever you want to call them, leftist ideas will end up in the dustbin of history. And we have to fight on a number of different fronts. You know, there's debt ceiling, there's health care, there's immigration, there's education. It's all over the lot. It's an all-front war, so to speak. And so we have to work that. And I think what we're going to talk about in our next session will be the military. And you can say, well, military, my gosh, is that a front in this battle? And I say very much so. I spent 20 years in the military. Know a little bit about it, been out for 22 years now. But there are core values that are instilled in people in the military. And those values that are instilled in the military are not those values that you see being carried out in the public political arena at this particular time. And in fact, I get quite concerned about that, because one of the things you first learn when you get into the military, particularly as a leader, I was an infantry officer, is that don't ever try to fool the troops. And that verb fool, sometimes there's variations with that verb. Usually in the Marines, fool is not the word that's being used. And the reason why that's so important is because with those core values put in and the basic common sense of American citizens, people at that level know right from wrong. When they're being treated properly, when they're being asked to do things that are good and helpful to the cause, and when they're not. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes at the upper echelons of the military, there's influence being pressed on them by some of our political leaders. And some of the core values being put forward by our political leaders now are not consistent with those core values. And so, and unfortunately, some of our senior military leaders are not leading the charge, as I think they should be, in looking out for those young servicemen in the troops who are trying to do right, and who often are putting their lives at stake, or their limbs at stake, as they go forward and do their duty. And I'm talking everything from strategy to the way they're being protected when they're put into legal situations overseas, to what type of practices that are being applied in garrison-type environments, such as not carrying weapons and that type of thing. So it cries out for some part of the American public to step up and look out for those guys in the trenches. And there's a group called the Uniformed Services League that is a grassroots organization that looks out for public policy related to servicemen deployed overseas and back here in the States. And that's the group that is going to sponsor the next leadership conference we have, which is going on November 13th. And the speaker for that, I think, is going to be quite appropriate. We're going to have a congressman say, oh my gosh, there's the political leadership class coming to talk to us about that. But Congressman Scott Perry is a congressman from the 4th District of Pennsylvania, who's had a great career as a trial lawyer. And you might say, oh my gosh, trial lawyers. Going along with this, he has been a officer in the U.S. Army National Guard. He is deployed to Iraq, which he did in 2009, 2010, where he was a battalion commander for a General Aviation Battalion. Made colonel. He's now in charge of the National Guard garrison at the Fort Indiantown Gap. So he's a staunch military person who, while he was a member of the Pennsylvania House of Delegates, deployed overseas as a colonel, serving the Army. So this is an unusual politician. I think his current rating by Heritage Action, which we all know is pretty important, is 89%, so he's right up there at the top. So I think he will be an absolutely outstanding spokesman for the military, because he knows the military, and also because he knows the type of pressure that's being applied at the congressional political level against the military. So he's going to come, and the title of the conference is going to be Salute to Our Servicemen and Save Our Servicemen. It's a dual title, SOS. So I think it's going to be a good opportunity, and it's going to be right here in this building on November 13th.